panel discussion. And so I have a few parents who have agreed to also share their experiences. So I'll do a little talking and then I'll ask some questions, and the parents that volunteered will join in and share their views, their personal experiences. So I'll start by introducing the panelists. So the first one is Mrs. Priscilla Okai. Priscilla, please, are you here?
Hi, Dr. P. I'm here.
Oh, so glad to hear your voice. Welcome. So Priscilla is a technology sales consultant with over a decade experience in telecommunications, cloud computing, automation, and engineering solutions. And she's a strong advocate for children with learning disabilities, including her very own daughter. And I've seen her advocacy. She does not play with the schools or anybody who has to deal with with her daughter. She's a strong advocate. She believes all children are born unique and will thrive when given the necessary support, the right environment, and the resources. In her spare time, Priscilla mentors young women and is a parent with a child navigating the complex web of living with ADHD and learning difficulties. So welcome, Priscilla. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Dr. Pierre. Thanks, everybody, for having me.
All right. So second, we have Mr. Lord Amwaku Ayisi. Mr. Ayisi, please, are you in the house?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. Welcome to the round table.
Thank you very much, Doc. And thank you to all of you.
Mr. Ayisi is married to a beautiful lady called Pamela, and they have 3 mighty boys. I like the description of mighty. It means they're keeping you busy. He serves as the academic director of ARC International School and enjoys listening to the audio Bible and spreading God's word to others. Welcome again, Mr. Ayisi.
Thank you.
And then third, we have Mrs. Ruthie Amaki Strauss Ashaibi. Ruthie, are you in the house?
I'm here, Christine. I'm here.
Welcome, Ruthie.
Thank you.
Ruthie is a legal practitioner and a mother of 2 10-year-old children with ADHD.
SpongeBob.
As someone who also lives with ADHD, Ruthie brings a unique perspective and understanding to her parenting journey. Please, let's mute our mics.
I'm here.
And Godfred and Ida, please help me to mute mics. All right, so continuing with Ruthie.
Nigger.
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 No. Naga, what the fuck is you talking about? How you can't do that
I
shit?
hate faggot
Nigger.
niggers.
Fucking nigger. Nigger.
Apologies, everyone. We'll sort that out. Okay, so it looks like Billy Flowers needs to be exited from the group. Give us 1 second while we sort that out. We want to have a wholesome discussion here. Okay, so I've removed. Oh. Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. All right, so Godfred, please help me out.
Yes, we
I'm
can hear
also
you.
seeing, okay, I'm seeing some odd messages. So let's check on those people and remove them if needed, if need be. Okay. All right, so back, I think I didn't finish with Ruthie. Her experiences as a parent and professional provide her with a well-rounded view of balancing work, life, and supporting children with ADHD. We all know it's a difficult job, and we need all the support we can get. So welcome again, Ruthie. We also have one additional guest, Mrs. Selassie Esezobo. Selassie, please, are you here? She wasn't sure if she could join. She has a family member who's not well. So she may join. She may be in and out. Selassie, please let us know if you're here. Okay. All right. So let's continue. So I'm going to say a little bit about ADHD. But this is not a lecture about ADHD. And then we'll start the discussion. Because the psychologist, somebody is asking if they can unmute. So we'll wait for places in the discussion where we'll invite people to ask questions, definitely. But we'll ask you to raise your hand up if you have a question so that it can be more organized, given that there's so many of us here. All right, so a little bit about ADHD. ADHD is a developmental disorder. It's usually diagnosed in infancy, during childhood. Sometimes it's diagnosed later in adulthood. And it comprises of issues with inattention, and sometimes, but not all the time, hyperactivity. So a child who's diagnosed with ADHD will probably have trouble focusing and sustaining their attention. They may seem absent-minded or forgetful, kind of daydreaming, or you send them, you say, hey, go to the room, go and pick up my bag and go and take the pencil in it and bring it to me. And they'll get to the room and they've forgotten what you said. They may seem disorganized. They may have trouble with planning. And then for those who are also hyperactive, it's like they're being driven by a motor. It's like they're on the move all the time and the parents are tired because there's so much to do to keep them engaged. You might find them climbing walls or interrupting things, or sometimes causing trouble or challenges at school. Now, remember, ADHD is not correlated to IQ. So you have very famous, successful people who have ADHD. Bill Gates, for instance, has ADHD. Trevor Noah, some of you may know. Simone Biles, the gymnast. So it has nothing to do with IQ, but it is an issue with attention and sometimes hyperactivity. So my first question that I'll throw out to the parents to get the discussion going is about the very beginning, when you started to realize or wonder if your child indeed has ADHD. I wanted to ask the panelist, in thinking about your journey with ADHD, how did you first come to the realization that your child or your children has ADHD or might have ADHD? Can you share your story with us? And I'll start with Priscilla, and then Mr. Ayisi, and then Ruthie, please. Crystal, are you in the house? Hmm. Okay. How about Mr. Isi, are you around?
Yeah, it looks like we may have to ask them to vote. Else we would have to make them vote so they can move their own convenience.
Ida, I think I heard you say something, but I wasn't loud at all.
So I was saying that we would have to ask them to unmute as part of deterring, a measure of deterring the others. We had to mute everyone, not allow them to unmute. So we would have to ask them to unmute so they can talk, since they don't have co-host right now. So
Okay.
if you have they joined with their names, please?
Yes. So I
I
have.
think the slides
Yes,
unmuted,
Ida,
or
so
they
I'm
can show
here.
their videos and then we'll be able to.
Okay.
Okay.
Krista says she's
Okay,
here.
so then you can kindly show your videos and you would know who is to talk, then we give you that privilege.
Okay. Hi, Ida. Hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. P. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Sure. So the question was the journey. So I think the first thing I'll say is I don't think speaking for myself that it's a clear-cut journey. I think for me personally it was a long winding journey because I started from a place of the unknown, and typically in our setting, and especially with our beliefs, everybody goes like, oh, the child will go out of it. So I started having seen the issue maybe way back in kindergarten and saying that, okay, so what my child produces typically in a class, when given the homework, the child cannot do the independent work. So that's where it started. So my early intervention involving all the teachers, involving everybody. But it wasn't until, unfortunately, until grade 6, after everybody keeps telling you, oh, you know what, they'll just outgrow it. We've seen this before. I had this person in my class until 6th grade when I decided, you know what, enough is enough. And then I was going to find out more. I was going to seek medical help. Mind you, this was me having sought medical help all along, but then I just hadn't done the psychological part. So to get to the journey, finally, when I got introduced to Mission Pediatrics, I decided to go and have the psych test done. So my journey was a journey of frustration, a journey of okay, if you're going to outgrow it, right from grade 1, grade 2, we don't see any improvements. Everybody keeps telling you to be patient. And I think I'd done the patience and everything until I realized there had to be more to this, because it doesn't fit any description that the teachers were giving me and friends were giving me. So I got the test done, and I think that's when I had the eureka moment. So the test gets done, and all my intuitions, everything that had been pointing to the fact this was more than what they were saying, was actually validated. So we did the test over a period. I think it was over a 2-week period with Dr. Pierre and Dr. Marilyn as well. And then out of it, we had the report. And then I got to find out that my daughter was ADHD. But then, interestingly, you know, for when you hear of ADHD, my initial understanding of it was there was a hyperactivity. But my daughter was not hyperactive. Oh, on the contrary, very laid back, very chilled. The only time you see my daughter animated a bit was only when she was watching cartoons. So she didn't fit the typical bill. But then once we got the test done, then we discovered that, oh, actually, for the girls, most often the hyperactivity is subdued. So you don't have the typical hyperactive kid as you have in a male as compared to a female. So that's when we finally got the diagnosis. And then for me, I think it was an eye opener, and it was like being given a second chance at life, really, for my daughter and I. So that's been our journey so far. So it wasn't, oh, we knew from the beginning that it was ADHD. No, we couldn't tell. We didn't have a clue, but we were inquisitive. We were pushing to find answers until we had to get the test done. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priscilla. So it was quite a frustrating journey. It wasn't clear cut straight from the beginning. And it took a while for for someone to finally say, this is exactly what's going on. Mr. Isi, how about you? What was your journey in the beginning like?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Ours was a little bit different. My second born, we call him PJ. He started having seizures about 2.5 years old. So we sought medical attention. And that was our concern. We didn't have any other issues apart from the seizures. By God's grace, we were referred to Mission Clinic. It was controlled, but we were having episodes here and there. So again, the medication was added. And that's when on that day that he was given that medication, he just couldn't stand still, like him. Again, he was active, but the senior brother was active, and so everybody thought he would go out of it. And as time was progressing, noticed that he wasn't going to go out of it. And the challenge really was he not being able to sit still, like the typical hyperactive kid. The first day I saw him test, my wife just said, yes.
Mr. Isi,
Like
could you speak up a little
so that's
bit?
a classical case. I'm saying that it was after another medication was added to his drugs. That's when we noticed her activity. He was always active, but his senior brother was also active. At that age, down later on. So everybody was expecting that he would come down at the, especially places where you expect him to sit quietly. He just couldn't sit. He just couldn't control himself. So at the point in time, we suspected something. But I still have a strong feeling, even today we're discussing that it has something to do with the medication. Because it became very apparent that day, right from the office when he took the medication, I was there. So that has been our story. It's been difficult, especially people don't understand. And they would always want to compare him to his other brothers. And that's a challenge. So he sort of had the diagnosis earlier, but it doesn't change the problem. He still has to focus. He still has to stay calm when he needs to. And it's practically impossible for him to be calm. Sometimes in the night, he will come and apologize to you for something he did. No, he knows he shouldn't have done it, or he should have done something better. He knows it, but he just cannot control himself. So that's the story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's interesting comparing your story with Priscilla's. So Priscilla has a daughter, and she presented with a lot of the inattention, but not the hyperactivity. So it was easy for ADHD to be missed. And then sometimes with the boys, we say, oh, but as for boys, they have energy, boys will be boys. So sometimes in those cases, we kind of brush it off as well. But as you're describing, he himself sometimes even feels sorry because he's so impulsive and has such a hard time stopping himself from thinking through everything before acting. And so it's important for us to be aware that ADHD is a possible diagnosis and to investigate if we're thinking about it for our own children. So Ruthie, I'm going to come to you now. Can you please share your journey, the beginning part of starting to realize or wonder if your children had ADHD? And I'll ask all the panelists, if you're able, please put your camera on so we can see your lovely faces. Okay, so Ruthie needs to be unmuted. Let me find you and unmute you. Godfrey, if you're there, please help me unmute.
Yes, I'm doing that.
You're doing that. Okay, thank
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
you.
Please,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my journey with ADHD in my kids actually started with me. I was diagnosed earlier in life with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
So I had challenges with reading. I had challenges with text.
Mm-hmm.
And I also was told that it could be genetic. So when my kids started preschool, I was always looking out for signs so that I can quickly see how best I can intervene and help them with all of those. My son started showing signs of dyslexia where he was finding it difficult to write 7 and F, and then the 9 and the P. He's always interchanging them. And as he was around 6 when he's reading, he skips things. So typical signs of dyslexia. And then I realized that I started getting very forgetful. I couldn't, as a lawyer, I'm always overwhelmed with cases. I couldn't organize myself. I was always frustrated. And there was a season where even when I did things and I feel like I didn't do it well enough, and people were praising me, I was like, it's so good and all. I later got to know it was called imposter syndrome. I felt that a lot. And so I have a psychologist. I reached out to her about this part of my life, and I felt like, is it because I'm growing old, I'm aging? But I think for some reason I never was able to go in there to have a proper session with her. So I met an old schoolmate who is a psychologist, and I told her some of my challenges. So she devoted like 4 months
Wow.
to try and see what my issues are, and eventually diagnosed me with ADHD. And I was like, okay. So she gave me a few materials to read on, and the more I read, the more I saw my son in those symptoms and all of that. He gets into trouble a lot. He's impulsive. He's jumping here and there. You can't get him to sit down and pay attention to anything. His best attention time is the first 40 minutes when he's waking up from bed. After that, you can't get him to sit down to pay attention to anything unless you involve it with activities. And I also noticed that he's more interested in very strenuous, let me say, sporting activities. So the more very, very energetic. And then my children are twins. It's a boy and a girl. So the girl, on the other hand, is very reserved. She's what we will call the neurotypical, just like her dad and everything. So she's organized. But so I went to Mission Clinic and spoke to Dr. Marilyn, and I told her these are my concerns. And so having read, I think that my son is, but I need to be sure before I put any form of label. And remember that I'm also struggling with mine. I've just come to know mine. I'm now coming up with lifestyle to keep myself organized and all that. And so he spoke with my boy, gave me a form, sent the forms to school, and the school completed it. Unfortunately, we never submitted it. Until this day that I speak to you, we have not submitted that form. It's called the
Submit the
CBAS or
form.
something. Yes, we haven't submitted it. It's in between. I'm traveling. When I'm around, I've forgotten to follow it up. It's in between those things. So I haven't gotten an official diagnosis for my son.
Okay.
But then my daughter, of late, she's become quite a talkative. And she finds it difficult to go to sleep. So when it's time for bed, that's the time she wants to ask you all manner of questions and all of that. So just about a month ago, I also started seeing signs in my 10-year-old daughter. And I had also read that, I mean, we females mask it better than the males. So this, having known this and waiting for a proper diagnosis, I tried to engage their teachers and watch YouTube videos, how to assist my boy with homework. And I also had to work on my husband because he's a neurotypical, cannot understand why this boy would just forget something I've just told you. Why have you forgotten? And then shouting and all of that. So sometimes some of the homeworks has been reserved for me to come from work to take him through it because it will involve a lot of games around the work to have it done. So for me, this has been my journey my journey with ADHD till today. There has been challenges, but I believe that you would ask questions along those lines and we'll go in there as well.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing, Ruthie. So as Ruthie said, it's not a straightforward journey at all. And we think of our generation or the older generation, and who knows how many of us may have fit the diagnosis for ADHD, but it was never really framed in that way. And we kind of just bumbled along. And so oftentimes when the diagnosis is done for the child, the mother or the father will say, oh, you know, I think I may also have this ADHD. And it's amazing, and it's a good thing that we are becoming more informed and more open-minded so that we can provide strategies, and in some cases medication for our children that need it. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question, which is going into the details of how we face and deal with those challenges. So Ruthie started us off things like having to divide and conquer. There might be one parent who just doesn't have the patience or the time to sit with a child with ADHD and work with them. And one of the strategies is saying, okay, you know, I'll deal with the homework, you deal with the bedtime. Let's talk about some of the real day-to-day challenges of having a child who has ADHD. For instance, morning routines, you know, in what ways are those different? Because as parents are on here listening, they might find similarities in their own experiences. So let's discuss the challenges. And then as we're doing that, maybe also the small solutions we found that have worked so far. So Prissa, would you like to start us off on that one? What were some of the real world challenges of having a daughter with ADHD?
Okay, so I think the first thing you realize is that your child is, if you have a child with a similar age, you find out the things they cannot do. I think that was the first shock. So they cannot lace your shoes without the help. They cannot button. So you realize that the things you take for granted, for instance, that by age 6, your child should be able to button up. It's not typical for a child with ADHD. So the learning becomes tougher, and especially in this era of comparison, it's very easy to get depressed and frustrated as a parent. I think for me, one of my biggest challenges was having friends around the same age and family, same age group, and then they were able to do stuff that my daughter couldn't do. Those were the first challenges that I faced, and then of staring reality in the face, but nobody seems to believe you. So you're telling teachers that you think there's more to this, but they're like, oh no, maybe you are fasting, maybe you're overthinking it. So you realize that, okay, in the quietness of your home, then you're like, no, I think that there's more to this, but nobody seems to understand or to believe you, because the teachers go like, we've seen these things, and the person gets to secondary and they're doing amazing, and so you're like, okay, let's keep the hope up. And then you go into the routine. So one of the things you realize is typical ADHD kids, you need to put them in a routine. So if you do not have a routine for them, then it's chaotic. So my mornings were chaotic. It's because waking the child up and saying, go and do this. And you're thinking that, okay, when I tell the child to go and brush their teeth, they're actually brushing their teeth and will follow through and go and dress up. But you soon realize that this child will probably go and brush their teeth and will still be waiting for you, or then get distracted doing other things. So you come in and realize, okay, but we spent 1 hour and we just brushed that 1 hour. We haven't taken up. So one of the little strategies that we started using was, okay, then now let's list the items. So you list the items. So you're supposed to do X at this time, do Y at this time. So that seems to have helped us to find ourselves in a routine. So routine is very, very important for kids with ADHD. Now, caregivers. So when you come to the home as well, just as Ruthie was saying, we the women typically, I think in our nature, we are more nurturing. So the men are more, for lack of a better, the men are more, it's not about practicality, but the men see, okay, A, B, C, this is how it's supposed to be. So if it's not that way, then they are lost. So we need to carry the people, the caregivers at home, and then your family, both immediate and extended. So if they're going to stay with grandma, the challenges you face is you need to let grandma understand that this is what you are facing. So it's not that this child doesn't want to do the homework, but this child lacks the capacity to be able to sit still for those 2 hours to actually get the homework done. So they're not playing truants per se, they just don't have it. So their typical homework will take maybe 4 hours, and it's be broken down in chunks of maybe 15 minutes, where they have to go and drink some water, they have to go walk around and come back. So those were hard, because look, you are the only person who can love your points and have that level of patience. Caregivers typically won't have that. So it is carrying these people along the journey with you to say, this is what I mean when I say this. And typically for school as well. So I had pushback when after my diagnosis, when we went in there to say, you know what, we think the doctor just write things on paper. The paper does not reflect who your child is. And so I had to fight back and say, well, I'd rather take the doctor's end, because if for 6 years you haven't been able to give me a child who outgoing, and they haven't outgrown it, if I now have a solution and I have a diagnosis, I might also have nothing to lose to be able to follow through with that. So let's put these interventions to practice so that we can at least see where it goes. So it had to get to the school where I think that's a piano. So some fights, taking professionals to the schools. And I'll come to that because it's very important. The schools may not necessarily mind you, not because they do not want to help, but they don't know where to start. And they are teaching, and they are the tenets of these schools are not founded on neurodiversity. So there's no room for a child who is atypical. It is like you either follow the masses or you're lost. So you have to fight. So I have fought. And so what I then did was, beyond sending the report to the schools, was to then set up follow-up meetings with Mission Pediatrics. So going into a new school, you had to follow that up, let them have the conversations, and then you follow up with more like your routine check-ins. So those also help a lot. And then you also have to make the teachers your friends, because look, we have to admit it. It's a lot to deal with. Even as a parent, you get frustrated. So you don't expect someone who spends most of the time with the kid to be that patient. So make the teachers your friend. They don't have the solutions. You give them the solutions. So for me, the breaks I requested was, yes, we'll have more bathroom breaks, more just go drink water breaks for my daughter, because she needs it to actually focus on the next task. So break the work into chunks. I do not mind her completing 2 assignments instead of giving her 10. So it's not going to work. So yes, for my child, do 10. And then the IEPs come into place that, okay, for this child, to enable the child to thrive, you need to put in an independent education plan for the child. Yes, they will not agree with you. They will say that's asking too much, but you need to persist, because if there's anybody who is going to be the biggest advocate, is you, the parent. So the challenges have been multifaceted, because it's like once you think you've solved one problem, the next comes up again, and that's how ADHD is. There's never like a silver line and say, oh, we've got it locked, because as you go, the things also change, and as the kids grow as well, the diagnosis changes. There are things, and when they hit the teenage as well, then comes a whole emotional changes they are going through, and its inherent challenges in itself. So navigating those ones have been tough, but I'll say the solutions are: one, break it down into tasks, break the tasks into chunks. So if you say, I want my child to wash their hands or wash their bowls after eating, it must be step one. When you get home, go and take soap. Step two, open the tap. Step three, wash your hands. Step four, wipe your hands. It may look laborious, but you go like, these are mundane things that my child should know. But sometimes it comes down to you breaking it that way for their minds to be able to process it and assimilate it. And so having them organized and giving them tasks, sometimes they are posted. So what I tend to do is, if I want my daughter to do something today, I put it on the fridge. So she has to do A, B, C, D, and it's all there. Step one, step two, step three, until it's done. So after each step, she takes it, and then she gets excited with the fact that she's completed the task and she's ticked it. So that has also helped us. With the teachers as well, it's been consistent engagement with the teachers. And I go in with an approach that, look, I'm not here to teach you your job. Of course, I can't teach my kid, but I'm here to say, maybe the way you are teaching this math, it's not going to work for my child. So use real life examples. She's able to understand if you put her in the example instead of using X and Y, which then gets very difficult for her to understand. And then as caregivers at home, and then with family, is saying that this is what I'm dealing with. This is what we are dealing with. So we are dealing with my daughter. This is how you're supposed to do it. You have to be firm, because people have their own beliefs, but then you really, really have to be firm and do it from a loving place as well. So I think for me, the challenges have been tough. It's been really, really tough, because I've had to change schools at some point. And so it hasn't been an easy journey for me, but I believe that being persistent really, really, really helps and in actually just getting us somewhere. So I think that's been what it is. But I'll still say, put the child on simple tasks, break the tasks into chunks, and it really, really helps. And it gets easier for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you. So many tips there. And you started with the challenges. One of the ones that stood out was a lot of them are about 3 years behind their peers in terms of like social maturity. So you find that in addition to just the struggles with school, you may have struggles with the social and with the friends as well. And you gave us so many tips that are working: the routine, listing the items, chunking the homeworks. So being ready to have 4 hours of homework time each day, but breaking it up so that there's rest in between, and really advocating for them. You've done a lot in terms of advocacy. And then you mentioned the relationship building. Someone said, lovely tips. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll move on to Mr. Isi. Do you have anything to add on in terms of the day-to-day challenges in your house and in your life with having children with ADHD, and what you found works?
Okay, Doc, I prefer you call me Lord.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
I agree with Chris.
Less formal.
I agree with yes, I agree with most of the things that she said. No, all the things that she said. I think that she's done a good job. And the thing that stands that nobody is going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And so, God being so good, we just have to homeschool all our kids. So we did that for a year, and then that means no income. So we turned it into a school, and because nobody really could handle our son. And even in the school, when you explain it to them, if they are making excuses for your son, um, and I don't blame them because I knew about ADHD, but I always thought that it was hype, it wasn't real. It's something that we just like to exaggerate. So I don't blame the caregivers and the teachers. So one of the things that we do is that we are very critical of the places we allow him to go, socialize. Because a lot of times, his own emotional conditions, he's hiding behind all these things. And if you fall in the wrong hands, they will damage you. So you have to be cautious the places where you allow these children to socialize. Again, you can imagine maybe you're in a church, you are preaching, and he comes to the pulpit coming to complain. It's embarrassing. It's difficult. People don't want to. But those who are willing to, they sort of agree, they sort of help. And then one of the things that I noticed is that you always have to create a loving environment. There was a time we got a drama. He plays drums. And this guy could actually be punishing, and he enjoyed punishing. You tell him, lift up your hands because it will strengthen your hands. So one of the things that for me, I see that the schools don't provide is we don't work on what the children are interested in. We always want them to be and that is frustrating for them. But caregiver, as a teacher, you always have to identify what the child loves to do, and you build from there. So there are so many activities. Balance is an issue. Reflexes are an issue. So what we did, we've done rugby, we've done football. Rugby was to help with the reflexes. You throw a ball, he catches it, and he's enjoying doing it. It is helping him focus. He's getting instant feedback. And so, as well as the child to have reflexes are improving. Again, you have issues with focusing. So one of the things that we do a lot of puzzle-based activities. The person has to sit down and then figure out things. So without necessarily giving the person a math assignment or something, the person is working on improving, and he enjoys doing that. Instead of giving the person something that is obvious that you want to make him learn. So, like Priscilla said, everything has to be, but I think it came up. Everything has to be broken down into fun activities. And it makes it, they don't realize it's not stressful, they want to do it, and then they do more. In class or when he's working like this, one of the things that you do, and I'm sharing these things, so maybe we could share with, some parents could share with the teachers. In class, the good thing was that my wife, Pam, was a class teacher until last year. So she was there in the classroom to ensure that he was not left behind until we got somebody we thought was capable of taking him along with other kids. So what you do is that he's good, he's sharp, but he won't do the work. So you ask, you all read together, then you ask them to answer question 1. They all answer together question 2. They answer together question 3. And before long, he's done. Or you tell them that the first to get, or those who get them correct, all their activities correctly done, will go out for a break, and he'll be the first to finish. He will finish within no time because he wants to go to play. So, as a parent, as a caregiver, you always have to come up with new strategies, new things to motivate him. I'm not proud to say it, but there was a day I had to take off his shoes at school. They were new shoes. If you don't work, you don't get them. You work barefoot, and he will sit down and work. But that won't work the next day. The next day, you have to come up with something else. We're doing
They
a
keep you
puzzle,
on your toes.
and he normally he normally will take about 10 minutes to do that puzzle. But I told him, if you did it under 10 minutes, you get a phone. If you did it under 8 minutes, you get a tablet. And I was shocked he did it under 4 minutes.
Wow.
So the thing is, a lot of times they can do, but they are not motivated. So you always have to find something to motivate them. And if you're able to do that, one over time, they get to realize that they are good. And one of the things that the standard that we set for our kid was that since we know that anytime he's stressed out, he's not going to produce the grades, he always has to be a step ahead. We are always trying to push him ahead of his age, especially because of an external assessment, so that anytime should he be assessed, it will be easy, then he will be able to do it. So that's the philosophy that we are working with, that you have to find a way of always engaging him, making sure that he's not at, he should always have an advantage. And that's one of the things, is that the teachers, when they realize that he's gifted, then they are willing to pay more attention. They are willing to excuse some of the so-called misconduct. So it's a difficult thing. You need to get involved. The teachers have to be trained to assist these kids. One of the things that, so currently in our school, we are doing an in-service training this term, and it's on exceptionality and special education. We brought people from the clinic just to speak to the teachers, so they appreciate the fact that these are real issues, and they are not only issues that we are making up. Other children are suffering from these things. And then when you have these professors, they come and then they speak to the teachers. They sort of take it more seriously than you speaking to them as a parent, because then they don't have any. And then they begin to modify the way they do things, and they begin to accommodate these kids. Bottom line, you have to have a plan. You have to share the plan with the relevant people. But again, you also have to be circumspect the places where you send these children to. If they are not accommodating, if they don't understand the condition, they may probably worsen the child's condition. Advice to parents: take an active role. Be proud of your kids. Always look out for what they do best. Comment about that, reward them when they do well. And then once they have it within themselves that they can perform, chances are that when you least expect them to perform, you will shine. So these are just a few things that I think parents can share with the teachers. And then the last thing I forget, individualized learning is important. Individualized learning. There are certain things you may have to spend more time on the child so the child can grasp the concept. Even today, I'm still not sure how my child learns. I'm not sure how simple things that everybody gets, then he messes up. So you have to try using all the senses in attempting to assist them. If you can use visual aids, do that. If it is audio, do that. Allow them to sketch, draw, anything that you can do to reinforce whatever concept that you are teaching. You do that. When you do that, chances are that it is likely they will work for long, and it's likely they remember when the need arises. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lord. You said I shouldn't call you Mr. Easy, so Lord. For those of you who couldn't hear everything, I'll try and summarize. So one of the big things is being proactive and thinking about what you expose your child to. If your child has ADHD, there are certain environments and certain people who are not necessarily educated about it or insightful about it. So be circumspect and intentional and deliberate about where you allow them to go, whether it's just like playground or school. Be sure that you're exposing them to people who will treat them in a way that they will learn and they'll grow. And so Lord mentioned that, and then he also talked about the day-to-day. So using incentives to motivate the child. Motivation is a big factor. It's not that they can't do it, but there's mental fatigue, it's tiring. So incentives work, but the same incentive that works today may not work tomorrow. And so be creative, stay on your toes, know your child, know what will get them to do what they need to do. He also mentioned group work, or sometimes what we call having an accountability buddy, or doing the schoolwork with another person or a sibling, so that it's like, okay, we've all done number one, we've all done number two. You can even add some fun competition to see who can finish first. And then he talked about just the school and the advocacy and the relationship building. So thank you so much, Lord. We'll move over to Ruthie. So Ruthie, even though you're still in the beginning part of the journey and knowing for sure whether the diagnosis is ADHD, in terms of the challenges, the daily routine challenges you face with your children, what are some of those, and what have you found works?
Okay, so most of what Priscilla said is what I've dealt with, and
Okay.
so I won't touch on the ones they've already mentioned so that I
Okay.
don't spend too much time.
Sure.
But one of my major frustrations was their school. I mean, I didn't expect that. If I told them that, look, my son, I think that it's difficult for him to sit at one place. I try to talk to them without using the acronym ADHD, because for me, I feel like I still haven't gotten the official diagnosis, so I didn't want to be putting the word out there like that. But I explained to them what his attention challenges are, and some of the teachers, they just dismiss it. Oh, it's, you outgrow it, it's nothing, it's their children, they are all like that, and it frustrates me, because then it makes me feel like you're not going to do anything about it, and my child is going to be with you for at least 8 hours today, and you don't want to listen to what he thinks, I think he needs. You don't want to try that approach at all. So those were my challenges. I reached out to, thankfully, they have subject teachers. I reached out to some of the subject teachers, engaged them to come and teach him at home. So when they come, I sit in sometimes, and when they are explaining things to him and he doesn't get it, I come in there and I explain it with demonstration, use some of the cartoon characters he likes and football players that he likes, and it sticks better. Then I'll tell the teacher that I mean, you have to, it's difficult for him to think in abstract. You have to give him characters to what you're saying, or else it's going to be all out there, he won't pay attention. And then, so on that level, I'm able to get some of the teachers to tag along the program, or what I think the program should be. But there's still that challenge where the general overview or approach to this is, your boy is a troublesome boy. He doesn't pay attention in class. He's too troublesome. Meanwhile, he's getting the A plus, A plus, A plus. Like you said, it's not an IQ thing. So he's getting all that, but he gets into trouble a lot. Another thing is, because he got into trouble a lot, he's often punished. And some of the punishments, because the school is not trying not to cane them, they withdraw them from something they like doing. Once it comes to my attention, I will call the school, find out from the teacher. For instance, currently we are going through a punishment of, he's not going to do PE until further notice, but he loves these physical activities. So I just called the PE teacher and I was like, okay, so what's going on? He said he talked back rudely at a teacher. So he's being punished. Oh, but as I've called, he's going to stop, let him join. I'm saying, no, I'm not calling you to stop punishing him for not, like, by withdrawing him from P. I just want to know how long it will take so that I also know how to manage him at home. And he said, oh, okay. So they were planning on doing it for another 2 weeks. I said, okay, stick to the program. Because despite ADHD, the child must know that there are consequences for things you do. And sometimes when some of these punishments will serve as a deterrent next time. So I didn't want to interrupt. Unless the punishment is inimical to his mental health, physical body, that one they are interrupted. So these are some of the things. And like Lord said, you have to, I've also tried to be careful where I leave them unsupervised. That's in where I take them. If I'm not convinced that you understand the concept, I am not letting my son come and spend time in your house without me. Because you might say something that will break his self-esteem for the next 1 month. And I will spend the entire month trying to build him back. So at the same time, I tell myself that I can't go everywhere and go and do a recce before you go and have a contact there. So we talk a lot about it.
Okay.
We talk a lot about it. My daughter has joined the conversation lately. We talk a lot about it, that ADHD is not a bad thing. It's just that your brain is wired this way. We watch YouTube videos. And then even recently, he came to tell me, Mommy, do you realize everybody in SpongeBob has some learning disorder? I was like, oh, really? Then he was telling me who was ADHD in the SpongeBob, who was dyslexic, who was this. I was like, okay,
I see. I
interesting.
didn't
So
realize.
as I'm talking to him about it, I'm trying to empower him so that people will make comments that you are lazy. People will say this, but you need to understand yourself. You need to understand why you think the way you do, so that you don't let it get to you. And so I feel like I need to talk to him more and sensitize both of them more about the ADHD condition, so that they can go everywhere owning it and being very proud about it. I share with them my story, my struggles at work. I'm like, today I couldn't just organize myself to do anything. So, Mommy, what did you do? I said, I realized that I just needed to focus and write and type some, but I couldn't. So I decided to do physical activities by arranging the files on my table and things. We also had conversations where he understood that the best times he concentrated the most was when he wakes up from sleep. So sometimes he'll get home, Mommy, I have a math homework. I've done number 1, but I want to go and sleep so that when I wake up, I'll do some of it before I eat supper. So he's also understanding himself. I mean, some of these challenges. So for me, these are the things. And routine, like I said, Priscilla touched on those things, routine. And then sometimes you try something, first 6 weeks, it works, and then it falls apart too, because it doesn't move them anymore. You need to come up with something. But my situation is I'm also struggling with my own. So there are times just I just don't have the bandwidth to handle my downtimes and his downtimes, and then we're just so what I did was get a therapist, a family therapist for all of us. And so sometimes when I can't deal with it myself, I ask, please call Auntie Dorothy, and then they call and then they have a talk, and so that I also get the chance to also process my own downtime where I don't feel like doing anything. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. It's frozen. Your picture is frozen, but we can hear you. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
At what point did you lose me? I just kept going on and on and on. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me
Priscilla,
as
can
well?
you hear? I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yes,
from everyone.
I can.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is another ADHD thing. So now I've lost my train of thought.
That's fine. You were
Yes.
saying that you're only human, and
Yes,
sometimes
yes, yes. And sometimes I
you need
also get
to
my own episodes where
delegate.
I don't feel like doing anything, but the young man has brought homework. He needs the usual guidance and prompting so that he does it. And I'm just not there. But I've also engaged some other help who come in to sort of do math homework with them and help with other stuff. So for me, routine, clock, we have a lot of alarm clocks. Alarm goes off in my house almost every other minute because I have to prompt him to do this, prompt him to do that. And now I'm increasing the time interval so that for the next 30 minutes, alarm will not remind you of anything. Let's see what you can remember to do by yourself. Also, I have tried to and get to know some of the things he loves doing. He loves football, and I also use it to manage him so that some of the if you don't do your homework by 6 p.m., you're not playing football on Saturday. If you don't get this done, you're not. As for the football one, it seems to have worked for the past 2 years. It seems to have worked. So he loves his football. So now you don't even have to prompt him. He knows that if he doesn't do this, come Saturday, he's not playing football. So small. We are trying to get there. We are managing our family members who think that we're just making up excuses for laziness and all of that. We are managing that one. I think my husband has got around to understand the program now. So he too would be sending him on errands in the middle of classes. There was one thing, and notice. That's one thing I didn't hear any of the other panel members talk about. Notice. So notice, when a child is playing, come on, go and put the book down. Come and go and put the board down, come and take your book. It doesn't work with my son. He'll come and take the book, all right, but he hasn't switched from the playtime. He's still there. So if you're trying to engage him regarding that book, it's like you're talking to a wall. But when you tell him, oh, in 15 minutes time, I would like for you to take a book and read. And that one, he's aware that in the next few minutes, he has to switch into, and so sometimes by 10 minutes, then he drops the ball and then comes to sit down. Takes him another 5 minutes to pick the book. And then eventually he sort of transitioned himself slowly into that.
Okay.
So these are some of the small things
Very helpful
we're
tip.
doing to
Very helpful tip.
carry ourselves through this daily.
Yeah, and I love the last one about shifting tasks because that's
Yeah.
one that is often difficult for children with ADHD and giving them the advance notice. Okay, 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes, it's time. And sometimes even then it's still hard, but at
Oh
least
yes.
giving
Oh
them
yes.
some
Yes.
time. And then you mentioned really teaching them to understand themselves so that low self-esteem they
Doesn't
have
set
their
in.
own, exactly. It doesn't set in. They have their own way of buttressing and combating it from
And
the
then
world.
to add to that, what I do is I have sort of printed out certain successful key people around the world. You mentioned Trevor Noah. We have Trevor Noah in our house. So
You have
that
a
they know
picture.
that it's not a disability that will set you back. But once you understand it, you can actually become great. So that's some of the things that, because they like pictures. When they have pictures to what you're saying, they're happy.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ruthie. So we have I have a few more couple of questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it up to the audience. The school conversation has been coming up a lot in terms of how do we navigate the conversation with teachers, with the school. I think all of you mentioned some dismissiveness sometimes from the school, like, oh, it's not anything, he'll be fine, or he's just not putting effort in. how can a parent go about this? Should they talk to the class teacher first? Should they go straight to the head of school? What would you advise for the best way to go about advocating with the school? And this one, I'll open it up. I've been doing the order of Priscilla, Lord, and Ruthie, so we can go that way.
Okay, so let me take that on. So I think it's interesting. I don't think there's a one size fits all. It depends on the school, really, and depends on the culture and what you've been able to figure out during the time of the school. So for some schools, you have to do bottom up approach because you're dealing with the class teacher. So you start from that one, the class teacher, then you get the subject teachers, depending on the level of the child, and then and then you work your way up. For other schools, you really have to start right from the top and get the buy-in from the top. So for me, I would say it's not one size fits all. You really have to understand where the power lies in the school, how the school operates, and then you also adjust it that way. Now, in navigating these conversations, I must let you know that as a parent of ADHD, be prepared is combat. So, and that's where you have to become the sweet fighter, but you have to fight because the schools are not set up to deal with the negativity or to deal with extra work. So it's more like if you're in a class and your child falls under the 10th percentile, you're fine. But they work with averages. So in a class of 20, if I can teach 15 students and they'll make 8 to B's, that's fine. The other 5, you can swim or you can drown. That's typically how the education system is set up, unfortunately, in most of our schools. So when you start the conversation, you start with the teacher. So your the immediate teachers, depending on how it works, have the conversation. And in these conversations, you really, really have to be open. So what I tend to do is I tell you, look, I am not questioning your work. I am not here to question your work. I'm here to tell you this is who my daughter is. This is how my daughter operates. And I'll need your support to get my daughter to cope. I'll need your support to get my daughter to achieve her highest in your class. So these are the things we'll have to do together. And then I'll let you know that I am not leaving everything to you. I'm a very hands-on parent. So tell me what you need from me, I'll get it done. But when I give you what you need from me, I also expect you to hold your end of the bargain. So a typical example is my child does not take a lot of information at the same time. That's a psychic overload. It just doesn't work. Typical ADHD. So you can't give her 3 assignments. So you're giving her math, you're giving her English, and you give her science to get all done the same day. And each subject takes maybe 10 questions. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. So the first thing I'll tell you when you give me the assignment is thank you very much. But this was going to happen. I think my daughter can do science today. So we'll do science on Monday and we'll submit on Tuesday. And then Tuesday we'll do math. Wednesday we'll do English. So at that level, it's at the teacher level. The teacher should be able to handle that. It's just one kid. So handle that. And I tell you, I'm not the pushback is, well, why do you want to treat your child differently? We said though they have the capacity. I'm like, yes, they do have the capacity. They just don't have the know-how to take it all in as another kid would. So please, this is what I'm going to do. So you engage with the teacher. It takes a lot of convincing, but it takes you to stand on business. It takes you to say, I mean what I'm saying. I need your help. I'm going to be there to walk both of us through this. And sometimes it comes to you just saying, okay, for this week, I've had to return assignments and done. A typical example, you give my child a math question, and these are doing quadratic equations. In the first place, I've already told you, my child does not need quadratic equations because they will never get it. It's too abstract. So unless you are, give me the basic in that quadratic equation. Let my child be able to do simple equations. Let them be able to do factor it out. I'm okay with that. So you give me the simple equations and then the child comes and it's 5 assignments. No problem. We take number. When I realize that my child cannot get the assignments done, now I have come in here and we've taken question 1 and have said, okay, if you want me to factor out, I say, Adwa, you factor the simple equation, x plus y in brackets minus this. So put yourself outside. Now, Adwa is outside. before you enter this room, you need to knock, right? So in that bracket, you have mommy and daddy in there. So Adra would ask daddy, knock, knock, can I come in? When you do that, it becomes Adra and daddy, right? AD. Then I put your sign there. If it's plus or minus, put the plus there. Now you ask mommy, Adra is outside again, the bracket. The bracket represents the door. So Adra, knock on the door. If you knock on the door and mommy says, okay, it is Adra and mommy, that becomes AM. And so that's how we solve question 1. Now, after solving question 1 that day, that's the capacity my child could achieve. So I go back to the school the following day and I say, okay, we've been able to do only 1. And this is how I did it with her. So if you're able to go through that, then we'll be able to do the simple equations. Was it accepted? Yes. Begrudgingly, yes. But that is how we have solved simple equations to date. If you give her a simple equation, she's always going to come back and say she's outside the door, she's supposed to knock, she's supposed to get it. So you have to know your child. So the first thing is, before you even have these conversations with the teachers, know your child. You need to understand your child's capacity before you go asking anything from the school. So you work with your child over time. You know that this is what they can do. Limit it to what they can do. As I've said, I believe every kid is unique. We all don't need to do Pythagoras theorem. For crying out loud, I don't even think I've ever used that ever since I completed JHS. So I don't need it. So you need to know your child's capacity and then let them move according to that capacity. Secondly, in engaging the school as well, you need an individualized education plan. I cannot overemphasize that. That one size fits all for everybody in that class is not going to work for your child. So ask the school for individualized education plan. Depending on your school, most of them wouldn't have heard about it. So you do the work as well. You read up. And that's when you need the professional advice. So you need a mission clinic. So you go in there and then you get Dr. Pierre or whoever is available for mission, and you say, I'm going to go to the school. We need an IEP done. I'll need you to sit in these meetings. What I realized is once you take the professional advice, right? You take a professional into these meetings. What typically happens is they realize that it's no longer about this is it or that is it. It's no longer about you, the parents, being a fast or you, the parents, fasting. This is actually bigger than they initially thought. So what they're going to then start doing is they're going to listen to you, and then you're going to be in there and you say, this is the plan. And one of the things you also have to make some compromises. They are busy, I understand. So you make your compromises. If you want your IEP in a week, I can assure you that's not going to happen. So maybe give yourself that by the end of one term, we would have an IEP in place. And then let's agree on the follow-up time, because in as much as you have to be the sweet pain, you also always have to remember that this is a collaborative effort. It's not me against you fight, but it's more like, how can we do this together for a better outcome for our child? So you agree on the IEP, and then what is in the IEP. And then in setting the IEP, I think Mission Clinic will help is stating in very clear terms what the expectations are. So what are we trying to achieve? So maybe if for this term, all we are trying to achieve is for my daughter to sit in the class 15 minutes per lesson and then do 5 minutes break to start with. Maybe now we are doing 15, but I want to reduce the break. So we need to see how best we can do that. If your child is someone who needs to feed and touch, which my daughter does, one of the things we realized helps is having a stress ball really helps. So you have a stress balls, and then in recent times, you realize that she enjoys doodling. So you have her have a paper to doodle and do that as well, so that the breaks, maybe they don't necessarily have to physically move, which then they find difficult coming back. But then it's about, okay, you have 5 minutes to doodle something and then share with the teacher. So the teacher will see the doodle. So I like this. Let's finish this in the next 15 minutes. So I can do another 5 minutes of doodling for me, or 5 minutes of pressing your ball, or maybe just 5 minutes of really walking to the next class or just outside the class. So that also helps. But in garnering that support, really in harnessing the support, you have to be open as well. You have to know that you're not going to get everything. So what you need to do is to know what your compromises are. So for me, what I have realized is I'm not going to push for an IEP in 1 month or in 2 months. I'm going to give you the whole term, but I'll check in. But by the end of the term, I insist that the IEP must be put in place. And I let you understand that if the IEP is not put in place by that term, it means that we've gone a whole 3 to 4 months and my child hasn't really had the necessary resources she needs to be able to thrive. So if you're assessing this child at the end of the term, she's already working from a place of a disadvantage. So the IEP is really a tool to make sure that we are at par with the rest of the class, really, to be able to succeed. And I think the other thing with the support and engaging the teachers is to build trust. So the trust is, for some schools, I've realized that the teachers are a bit worried in terms of what they can take for you as a parent, as again what the schools allow, what the school allows. So build that trust. If you know that your teacher can do you favors, and I use favors loosely, but can maybe support your child an extra 10 minutes after the last lesson ends, appreciate the teacher. Take the 10 minutes. I have teachers who have said, my child works very well early in the morning, so rest is very important. So you can have her from 7:30 to 9:30. She's a peak period. So I've had teachers who say, look, I know school starts at 8, but then if you can bring her in for 7:30 to 8, I can maybe support her in math. I can support her in composition. So those are interventions that we have in place. So you take those interventions.
And that's when it's helpful
They may
to
not be
have
the
that
grandiose
relationship
ones.
with the teacher so that they can offer
Yes,
some of these
exactly.
solutions. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. So that they can offer it for us. So I think for me, that's what has worked over time in terms of getting it. Do I have everything? No. And I always say, when I heard Mr. Isi say, oh, he says you should call him Lord. So when I heard Lord say he homeschools his children, I said that's ideal, because for ADHD, it's best if you are able to homeschool them, because then all these things we are talking about, the past sits with you and you can determine the pace, because they can't work in the typical 8 to 3 environment and thrive. It has to be tailor-made
It's not
for
easy
them
to
if we
find a
really
school
want them
that's
to thrive.
able
So
to modify the timetable in that way.
no. And I think I'll tell parents that I have done that hard work where look, I've looked everywhere, and you it's hard to find, and it's hard to break in sometimes, because then you realize you're really in the minority. And I keep saying that in our part of the world, it's more like it's a sin, for the lack of a better word, to find yourself having any sort of educational challenge. It's really, really hard, because there's no room for you to thrive. We don't have any academic curriculum made for you to support you. So you, the parents, will have to work hard at home as well. Yes, so you have to you really have to compensate a lot at home. So for me, know who your child is. If your child is a kinesthetic learner, know what they need. If your child is a visual learner, you need to know what they need. So most of their assignments, ask the school that instead of them copying notes, let them print out the notes for the child. Let them know that, okay, if you give her a presentation, which works for my daughter, we'll do the presentation nicely. But if you give us worded text, it will take us forever. We'll not get it done for you. So for me, I think it's about we knowing who our kids are first, understanding what these kids need from our end as well. And then we go to the school with the peculiar aspects that we are looking for. Being supported by professional reports, professional advice, and then together we are on a path to success. So I think that's what I'll say when it comes to how we navigate these conversations.
Thank you. Thank you, Priscilla. So it's important to be specific too. When you're going to the school with suggestions, to know specifically, are you asking for extra time for the work? Whether you're asking, please use concrete examples because my child thinks better this way, to have your specific suggestions. Because of time, Ruthie or Lord, do you have anything to add to that? So we'll do just one other panelist and then we'll wrap up so our audience can ask questions.
Priscilla has said it all for me.
Okay.
She said it all for me. So Lord
All
can
right.
have it.
All
Yeah.
right. Lord, do you have anything to add? Your children
Yes.
are currently homeschooled?
No, so
Okay.
we upgraded to a school, but
Uh-oh.
it's a
Mm.
Auntie.
small class school,
Okay.
not more than
So Lord, it looks like your
7
connection is a bit
class.
choppy. So if you don't mind, if there's
Can
any
you hear me
sort of
now?
succinct advice, if you can just type it in the chat and then I'll read it out for everyone. I hope you heard me. Lord, can you hear me? All right. Okay. So I think let's open
That's
it
all
up.
right. I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for being
I'll do that.
flexible.
Yes, I did. I'll do that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I can.
All
I can.
right.
I'll do that.
Okay. So audience, it's open for questions. I see some of you have already put some questions in the chat. I saw Martha's, I think that was the first one I saw, asking about my son's teacher always complains that he can't comprehend. Could there be any advice or tips? And I think listening to the panelists, especially if it's ADHD comprehension, it could be that he's not paying attention the whole time, and so he's having difficulty making sense of all of it. And so, like Priscilla mentioned, specific suggestions to the teachers if they are open to being flexible. So for instance, chunking his work. So it's saying that, okay, finish number one, bring it back to me. Let's see how you did it. Did you understand? That one-on-one feedback can be quite helpful with the breaks in between. Some schools will have a teaching assistant in there. Some schools will even allow a facilitator who can then work with the child while the main class is going on to help them understand. The example of using concrete information has been given as well. So even quadratic equations where we are using mommy's knocking on the door coming in, or and then daddy. So really concrete ways of helping the child. And Ruthie mentioned use a cartoon or football example, and suddenly it makes more sense to this child who's having trouble focusing. So, but with comprehension, there could be other issues. And so it's helpful to have a professional assess the child and see if there's something else going on that's getting in the way of him understanding. So Martha, that was to answer your question. If you'd like to add on to your question, Martha, please unmute if you're able to and ask. Okay. Then Ophelia says, fortunately for me, my kid's school is on board. Okay, so we have a good news example where therapists, DSA, everybody's on the same page. You have an IEP meeting and it's helping a lot. Okay, so Ophelia, you're very blessed. It sounds like you've found a good school with a good program. Rosalind says, GS has a curriculum for children with ID, intellectual and developmental disability, but the training of special educators falls short. And so the teachers come out and actually find it difficult to handle the kids. That's very true, Rosalind. And so sometimes the parents find that they have to be the advocates and almost working in very detailed ways with the teacher to help them figure out how they can help. Okay, so the floor is open. If anyone has questions, please raise your hand or type it in the chat, and then we will all try to chime in. It also doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment or wondering. Okay, so Ophelia added that she had to do special needs education program and get the school on board. So you're doing a lot. All right, so Lord has typed out his tips. He says for engaging with the school, get the head of school and the teachers on board, but with a professional. So use a professional. That makes it easier for them to be open and listen to the tips. Focus on the most important subjects. That is so true, Lord, because a lot of times our children are taking so many subjects and the school realistically can't apply these strategies to all of it. And so focusing on what they're having difficulty with, math, science, English, or music. Sometimes one is so extreme too, and it's really affecting their grades. We might even advocate and ask that the school allow them to drop a subject that they're not likely to keep taking in the future, so that they have extra time. Some schools will agree to it and they have a space where they'll get one-on-one. Some schools are not able to do it, but focusing on the help with the most important subjects. Learning must be fun and learning must also be meaningful. Thank you, Lord. Very, very helpful. Okay. And then Rosalind says IT is also very good for our kids' development. Rosalind, do you want to unmute and speak to what you mean? Godfrey, please see if she's able to unmute. Uh-oh, we have another spammer. Oh, okay, that was old. Rosalind, are you able to unmute? Oh, okay. All right. We understand. We wish you a speedy recovery. But Rosalind wants to share that IT can also be helpful. We have to be careful with IT though, right? Because the screen addiction is real and sometimes they'll get carried away. But there are also a lot of programs that are helpful. Like Monster Math, which is one of the online programs, makes it so interesting to learn math in a way that sometimes a teacher in a classroom may not. So look into possibilities and alternatives online, but make sure you monitor the time on the screens. I'm wondering if people are unable to unmute, and that's why we're getting messages instead of hand raises.
So Dr. Pierre,
Yes.
if anyone would like to ask a question, they could raise their hands and then you ask them to unmute by clicking on the right side and ask to unmute so then they can unmute. We had to disable the self-unmuting because of the interactions we were having during
I
the
see.
delivery.
Okay. All right. So please, as Ida said, use the emoji. Mine is a little heart, but if you click on the arrow, it will allow you to go to hand raising. All right, I'll read some of the comments. So somebody is asking, can a child with autism have ADHD? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Some children with the diagnosis of autism also have ADHD. So it's important to know and to cater specifically to the short attention span. And that's something that we can do at Mission for you. Oh, we have a SEND teacher on board. Lovely. And they say they are encouraging parents to always get the necessary assessment by the professional, because that's also helpful to the teachers. The specific recommendations and knowing exactly how to help the child is helpful. Okay. Somebody's interested, Ophelia, somebody's interested in the school your children are in. Because as we mentioned earlier, it's not easy to find a school that can cater to special needs completely and fully. Okay. So I think it has been an amazing session. It's so helpful to hear from parents, from the psychologist, and we can give recommendations, but it's general, it's abstract. There's nothing like hearing the real life experiences of parents. So we are really, really grateful. Okay, some questions are coming in. Do children with dyslexia have ADHD? So similar with autism, some may have what they call a comorbidity, so more than one diagnosis. So you can have a child who has dyslexia and also has ADHD. How do you know, or how can you tell? You need a professional to assess and let you know. It's not an easy assessment to make, right? It's not something where you can watch a video and say, oh, yes, 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 okay, my child has ADHD, because there's so many other factors that come into play. So for instance, a child with anxiety can look like they have attention problems or can look like they have trouble sitting still, but the cause of it may not be ADHD. The cause of it may be trauma or anxiety. Sometimes somebody going through depression or stress could look like they have low concentration, like they can't focus. But again, the cause might not be ADHD specifically. It may be depression. So you really need a professional to do a full assessment and conclude on that. So if you're wondering how to figure it out for your child, Mission Clinic is available, Mission Pediatrics in Kokomlemle. Book an appointment so we can help you. Favor says his hands are raised. Favor, let's unmute you so that you can also speak. And people, can you help me unmute Favor?
Is
So
there a
we'll wrap
question
up
on
in
you,
about
please?
10 minutes. Ida, did you say something?
Okay, so both people who had their hands raised up have been asked to unmute. So
Okay,
we've
okay,
sent them the message to unmute.
okay, all right. So
Um,
Favor, please go
hello?
ahead.
Yes, I've unmuted. Please can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. So what I realized about my um niece, my nephew, is that he has difficulty with writing. He's in basic 7, but we still cannot see what he writes, and so he doesn't write in class. He doesn't bring his homework to the house because he's always late in writing, and he would rather hide his homework book, or hide any assignment that they give him. Like I said earlier, you cannot see what he writes at all, and it's a bit of a worry for us. So, is there any specialized help for somebody like that? Who I also see we see signs of dyslexia. We've not sought for an assessment yet, which we'll be doing very soon. But we see that his attention span is very, very short. Someone who is 11 years, you typically have to let him know that when he wakes up, he should brush his. If you give him 2 instructions at the same time, forget about the other one. Brush your teeth. He comes back and you say back before he knows that he needs to bath, and also we seek assessment for him. But is there any typical help concerning the handwriting?
The
Maybe
writing.
somebody to help. Yes, the writing. Is there anything like that?
Yes, yes. So the occupational therapists, they are very experienced and specialized in helping with what they call the fine motor skills. So things like handwriting. So for instance, if the handwriting is not legible, it's possible that he has dysgraphia. That's a specific learning disorder with impairment in writing. And an OT or an occupational therapist can help with activities to strengthen that and help him. There's a different kind. Does he have trouble with just how neat the handwriting is? Or does he have trouble with actually, like if you say it, he can say it, but if you say write it, then he's not able to.
yes, so if you, he's very, very smart for his age, so he can say, speaks very clear, big English. But when it comes to writing, it's not eligible.
Yeah.
He would cancel out his work a lot of times before he gets it. So his books are very clumsy. And then
Yeah.
if he writes, you can't read. You can't read most of the time. You can't read a sentence, a full sentence. You can't
Okay.
read each of the words.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he may have both. He'll need a proper assessment, but it sounds like he may have a specific learning disorder for writing as well as reading. In which case we would give specific recommendations. And sometimes we also say the schools should sit up kakra for these children, because if they are able to give you the answer orally, and you know that they've learned the knowledge, then allow them to. Some schools will also suggest typing, because eventually when they are grown, if they can learn to touch type and type really fast, where they don't have to worry about the curvature or how the pen is going, they're still able to get the information across in writing. So some schools will allow for devices, not for the very young, but for later, like late primary and secondary. So there are different recommendations depending on the specific presentation, but a full assessment is needed.
Okay. Which way? So if we can get the assessment done at Mana, okay.
At Mission. So the
Okay,
organization
Mission,
for this
sorry.
webinar is Mission. Yeah, Mission Pediatrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sure. So
Okay.
we'll come around. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Okay.
All right. So looking for the other hands up. I'm having trouble seeing it. So who, if you've been given permission, please go ahead and unmute and speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you
evening.
so much for the opportunity. I've learned so much.
Oh, you're
Now,
welcome.
my question has to do with a set of twins I've been tutoring for a few years now. I realized that the older twin showed some ADHD symptoms.
Okay.
So the issue is that he remembers answers after the exams are done. And it's usually really a problem because I'm a private tutor. I come home to teach them after they are done with school. So it makes it look as he's not learning anything, or he's not learning anything, sorry, or he's not understanding the concept. And it's really a struggle because he comes back home and let's say the parents are complaining, you give him the same set of questions, then he answers them excellently. And I go like, how could he still remember in class or in school? And he goes like, I don't know why you see. So I realized he has a sort of like a focus issue. But like the Madam Ayisi said, I think most schools are yet to embrace the individualized education plan. So it makes it very tough because this guy I'm talking about is very talented. He's like, he can, sometimes I even get distracted because I know I'm ADHD myself, but mine is much more controlled because I'm older and I know how to do it. But he is so young and he'll be working, then he starts singing. Then you say stop. After 5 minutes, he starts singing again. So with such a kid, how do you do that? Because you don't have an impact on what happens at school. All you do is to come to the home to be of more of support. How do you help such a kid become much more of a focused individual?
It's a very good question. Thank you for your question. So I'll give my ideas if anybody wants to chime in. It sounds like two things could be happening in the classwork or test environment, right? It sounds like there's something in the home environment that allows him to be able to answer, whereas in school he cannot. For children with ADHD, sometimes we'll recommend that for tests, they are allowed to take it in a separate room with less distractions, because some children with ADHD, anything can distract them, right? So they are trying to focus, and then somebody walks into the classroom, or the invigilator is walking up and down, and they are easily distracted. It's harder for them to actually finish the work. It could also be anxiety, right? Because it's like the child knows, the children, they know, okay, I'm getting extra support. You know, my parents want me to do well. Then you get into the test environment, it's like the stakes are so high and you go blank because it's just stressful. So it may be a matter of teaching him ways to relax before the test, whether it's breathing exercises or to visualize being in the test and what he's going to do before, so that when he gets there, he doesn't panic. And there's a number of different things, but I think for now, I would suggest you think of specific recommendations, something like having him take the test in a room with less distractions, or if they're willing, having the teacher or the assistant just kind of keep an eye on him and tap him on the shoulder if he looks like he's daydreaming and not doing the work. So that's what I have for you. We're going to have to wrap up soon. Martha's hands are up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so my son is ADHD and have mild autism. He had delayed speech for a while. When he was a child, he didn't talk till 3 years. So the pediatrician recommended us to take him to Kolebu first. Then they diagnosed him. Then I realized that the therapy was delaying. Like they will ask you to come today in the next 6 months. So I reported back to the doctor and he recommended Mission Clinic to us. So we came, they did the diagnosis and everything. We started therapy. But when he went to year 2, and then we submitted the questionnaire, the doctor suggested that we come after the beginning of every academic year. And to be frank, I've also had other 2 kids and I've been busy and all that. But right now, the challenge I really have with him is that the English teachers keep on complaining that he can't comprehend. What I've observed is when he comes home with a passage that he's supposed to complete on his own, or questions that he has to think for himself, that one, it's off. If it's a passage he can get the answers from, that one, we are cool with it. So maybe we'll do one homework. Like this weekend, he brought 3 homeworks. We have done 2. Hopefully, we'll do the other one very early in the morning before he goes to school. Because he cannot sit and do all the 3.
So he needs the extra time. Like one of the
Yeah.
panelists was saying, sometimes you have to advocate and say, look, please give us extra time for assignments. We won't be able to finish all of this by tomorrow. But if he has the extra time and the support and scaffolding, is he able to then understand? Or it has to be, like the answer has to be visible in the passage?
Yes.
It still has to be. Okay.
It has to be. So
Okay.
sometimes I have to use maybe YouTube videos. You have to watch it over and over and over again before you can answer one question.
Okay. And you said he has an official assessment.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sometimes with the different cognitive levels too, you know, intelligence is so broad. You'll have children who maybe reading comprehension is low. Listening comprehension is much better. Working with their hands, they can do amazing things. They'll be creative. And so we also need to be aware that maybe for reading comprehension specifically, he's at a different level from the average person. And you'll do everything that you need to, right? Because you expect the best of him. So you don't give up. But he may always be different in terms of what he's very strong and good at, and what he's not. You're already doing the right things, the practice and the one-on-one, because the brain is like a muscle. You know, the more he practices, the more you kind of break it down, like using videos or different like stimuli to help him understand what he's reading, the easier it is. But if his reading comprehension is below average, then it will take that extra time and extra work.
Christine, can I suggest something that I
Yes,
did
please.
for my son?
Yes, please.
So he also gets that block. I also suspect that he's dyslexic like me, but like I said, we're in the process of getting that official diagnosis. So what I let him do is he has an app on his tablet that where he can't seem to comprehend the passage he has copied from school, I let him read it and record himself. And then when he records himself, I let him go and play. When he comes back, he plays it and listens to it. And then you see that now he's completing the passage with something that comes to mind. Or so maybe
I love
can
that
work
idea.
for her, or maybe, yeah. Like no one size doesn't fit all. Like
Martha, that's a
dyslexia.
brilliant idea. So it's almost like you're changing the reading to listening.
Yes, the
Now he's
audio,
just
yes.
listening to himself.
Yeah, I do a lot of audiobooks because of dyslexia. And also, as I've grown, I don't have time to sit and read. So everything I can get on Audible, I need to read it. I can get on Audible. I buy the audio version and play along. And having said this crossed my mind. I hope there's going to be a session for adult ADHD as well, because we are passing it on to our children. And some are living in denial. Some think that when they pray and fast more, they get more focused, but it's only temporary. So I hope there'll be a session in the very near future for adults with ADHD, especially women with ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD.
Okay. We hear you, Ruthie. We hear you. So I'm going
Yeah,
to
so
sorry.
just a quick one on that. Just a quick one to Martha. So I think the other bit is with Martha, for me, just as Ruthie said, spot on. So you can let them do the audio bit. The other thing I've also realized is that sometimes it's trying to break it down for them. So you read the passage and you're trying to get the concepts of the passage. So what I've realized is typically with ADHD, we want to find the easy way out so we can complete the task because you're already tired. So we'll read it. So you read it over and over again. And then typically what you have to do, you make inferences. It takes a lot for some of the kids to make inferences, to infer what they're asking them that's not written boldly in front of them. So you have to get in there and get some keywords, and then you relate it to things that have happened around them. So what will happen is they seem to now understand, oh, okay, so maybe in this passage, this is what the cat was trying to do. It wasn't written that the cat was trying to trick the mouse. But actually, when familiar to them, then they begin to realize, okay, that's what you're trying to say. And then they have like the light bulb moment, and then it helps. And for children who can't seem to write, so I'll share this one. My daughter was given composition and had told the teacher that, I can't think of what you're asking me to write. And it's not being rude. And so the teachers had to ask me, and I said, yes, you've asked her to write a story about something they have never experienced. That's creativity, that's imagination. People like them, it has to be, it is this and this is what you're asking me. So this is what I can see, what I can see, feel, and touch. That's what I can reproduce for you. So what then we had to then do is, okay, go back into life experiences. Okay, have you say maybe watched a movie about this before? Either have you been told a story about that before? So it doesn't necessarily have to be your personal experience for you to reproduce them. So sometimes it's how we guide them back to be able to write that very thing that we want them to write, or to focus back on it, because they think in a certain way. And so we have to redirect that way of thinking. And hopefully it works for someone as well.
Thank you very much. And then I see that I missed a comment from Lord.
Dr.
Ida,
Pierre,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'll have to cut you here. There
Okay.
are questions and things on our YouTube page.
Okay.
It looks like we are not being favorable towards them.
Oh,
And
okay.
so one of our parents is also complaining. So I beg you, Godfred has sent you something. Kindly check for us. Before Prince's hand has been up for some time.
Okay, so I have Godfred's message. I see 5 messages. The first one says, "My son is 6. I'm struggling with getting him to understand basic concepts, and it worries me. I'm doing the intervention, but I still worry about his understanding. How do you cope with this?" Okay, so this parent is saying that they are doing everything they can, but he's still having trouble understanding things. My first question would be whether he's had an assessment to figure out the underlying cause for the difficulty, right? Because it could be through the readings. So for instance, if he has dyslexia, then it's extra work to process the words before he's now coming to try and understand it. If he has any specific learning disorder, that could be the underlying reason. If it's attention. So first we have to figure out what is the cause for his trouble understanding the basic concepts. Or if it's an intellectual disability, for instance, and then the interventions. The intervention, it's not an easy road. And I'm sure every parent will tell you here. Sometimes we want a quick fix. We want it to be like, okay, we've done the intervention and now they're fine. But it's a long journey. I would say have patience. Don't give up. Use the communities, right? So for instance, Mission has ADHD communities, special needs communities. Other parents will have ideas. Involve the school as well. Find out if there's a way they can help, for instance, with extra time, extra tutoring. So that you as a parent are getting your support and the child is also getting the educational support. And then another person said the education system in Ghana must prioritize inclusion and diversity among students rather than solely focusing on profit. Yeah, so this is something we've been advocating for special needs and increasing inclusion and diversity in all schools, because it's still very difficult to find a school that's able to help our neurodiverse children. So that's what I have, and then the rest are comments about how it's very challenging and that sometimes parents are in denial. So parents, please, it's difficult. We all have ideas of who we want our child to be, but let's be open-minded that they may be great in a different way than we planned. And then the last comment on the YouTube says, knowing what we know about our kids' learning challenges, at what stage do you start assisting them with choices geared towards one career or the other? Thoughts, please. That's a very interesting question. I would say lower secondary, if they are able to get to that point. Otherwise, if they have severe intellectual disability, then straight from the get, start noticing and observing what they like, what their strengths are. Do they like reading? Do they like arts? Do they like fixing the bike all the time? Are their strengths in hands-on activities? If so, then find those activities for them to engage in so that over time they can turn it into a career. If they are able to do the formal schooling, then you can wait until about lower secondary, that's like JHS 3. There's a career assessment that you can take online. It's the Holland Career Test. It's very simple. Some of it is just pictures, but it will tell you if your child is a builder, a creative, an investigator, so someone who's likes to do research, whether your child is a persuader, so someone who likes to talk and convince people. It gives you a general idea, and then from there you can work at finding a specific area for them. All right, so Prince, you have the floor now. Prince, are you still with us?
Hello,
Yes. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
can you hear
Yes.
me now?
So my name is Prince, Prince Salom. I'm an advocate for special kids,
Prince, it's not very clear. It's a bit choppy.
special education as well. I got this one. I'd want to ask or find out if there is it clear now? Is it
Yes, I think it's a little better.
Okay. Okay. So, I was saying that, do we have a or questionnaire in case a child is being admitted in a school? The parents could go through this special form to give the school some idea of what child we are admitting. I work in a school as a director, so as it stands now, I have a child or two in my school with situations like this. That's where Adhd came in to assist us from Mission Pediatrics. So I'm only looking at a system where we can know the other, understand what's happening, and not to wait in denial. So a form will have them in our various help schools know that what child we are admitting in, and also help parents to identify a child who they have, so we can call on the the right persons to assist these children. I think sometimes we get to see them late, after 3-4 years, when we all get to the realization that our children are actually not talking or they are behaving in a certain way, which sometimes gets late. But if we should see that when they are starting school at 2 years, it will be easy to identify some of these traits and then start working at them as early as possible. My next is I'd want to also clearly invite you. There are quite a number of private schools here in Ghana, and I know you can't do it all. Typically, there is a private schools association, and I'd want you to, well, I can help you get in touch with them. So once a while, when they have their conferences, we can actually educate the school leaders so they get to understand some of these realities. And then also it would help them to make room for students of this sort. It's not the fault of the school leaders not knowing some of these things. Some schools are run as businesses. So then, of course, we are looking at admitting students and teaching them. But if the education should go out there to the school leaders, I clearly believe they'll make it a point
I think Prince dropped off.
to have the specialists in their schools and make room for a problem. Am I back now?
You're back. You're back. Please go ahead. You're making very important points.
Yeah. So I said, or I mentioned that I would love us to get in touch with the Private Schools Association in Ghana, but from the Greater Accra region. They are called NAPS. That's Ghana National Association of Private Schools. I can lead you to its head office, where we get to put ourselves into their programs, their conferences, workshops. So we educate for them to get specialists into their various schools, where they can help and identify students with these problems. I think
I think that's a great idea.
forward would be education, and let's start it from the right persons, and it will go well for all of us. I'd want to advise this. I can get in touch with
Okay.
Yeah, I can get in touch with organizations. I think they'll be ready to have.
I think those are great ideas. To answer your first question, yes, there's definitely forms that schools can fill out. A lot of them depend on the age or stage of the child. So whether it's preschool versus primary versus secondary. So if you send an email to info@missionclinicgh.com, I've put it in the chat, we can get back to you on specifics. A lot of those, there's different stages to that. Screening ones where we can collaborate with the school, because once they fill out the questionnaire, you now have to like score it and interpret it and all that. And that's where Mission can help. But there are definitely screening tools that can help the schools know ahead of time if there's going to be a challenge that needs to be addressed. And I love the idea of collaborating with the private schools. So please, please, please reach out to us via email, and we'll make sure to get in touch with you offline. Okay, people, it is 7 p.m. We will have to end this very insightful and productive conversation. We've taken 2 hours of your time. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So I've taken much of your time. It has been very insightful. We've heard from the parents, we've heard from special needs teachers, we've heard from directors of schools. There is a lot that needs to be done when it comes to special needs, neurodiverse children, children with ADHD. So everybody on this platform, please consider yourself an advocate for these children. And as Ruthie mentioned, sometimes for the adults too, who are still trying to figure out their ADHD. Speak up is the only way that we can start to educate those around us and eventually change the nature of the conversation around special learning difficulties. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and I wish you a restful rest of your evening. If you have other questions, please email the email that has been put in the chat. All right. Bye.
Thank you.